Yeah.
I would like to ask a question.
Just go away. Let's
avoid the feedback.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you are elected, you will be in a of influence. Now, if the microphone.
Don't have it too close to your mic. Hold it further away, I think. Oh, it's actually, it sounds like the battery might be dead. Just you have to yell.
So, okay, let me move. Perhaps it works. Okay, let's get to the chase. You'll be in a position of influence, and if you had your way, what one policy, legislative or constitutional change would you like to see if you were elected? Because we've been talking in generalities about procedures, about scrutiny, whether you're going to be on a department or not. We want to know more about you, what motivates you, what passions and drives you have underneath. What one policy, legislative or constitutional change would you like to see if you were elected? Thank you.
Okay. Diane, you're first up.
Now that is a good question. I didn't think I was going to say that tonight. I had a joke with my husband earlier. Well, interestingly, one of the things that I think comes together with quite a lot that's been going on over the last couple of months as well, especially with COP. I think I'd like to understand a little bit more about our transport policies, and therefore understand why we might give free transport to some and not to others. I think that is something I'd be very keen to influence and understand. We're very lucky on the island, we've got decent transport, especially public transport, but why is it we give some people free public transport and others not? So I think that's what I would look to do if I was able to influence. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm passionate about developing our brownfield sites, which are blotting our towns throughout the island, and I moved a motion to set up a select committee, which I then chaired, and one of the outcomes of that was the formation of the Max Development Corporation, which I'm delighted is now looking at its first site. And I think that will really help lift Douglas, and I think it will also help with the housing crisis that we have. So I'd be pleased to continue to support that, because I think we're really missing a trick there. I'm also interested in the community infrastructure levy, which is, both of these are agreed policies, and that I think if it could be implemented effectively, then I think that would help redress the balance between brownfield and greenfield sites, so that we stop concreting over the max countryside and start looking at the empty block sites that we have in towns.
You didn't mention active travel there, so then you shall get your bike. Okay, up to the top you go.
I think I would look at infrastructure projects, and I know the capital projects unit has been discussed. It seems to have gone silent. What are they doing with DOI? And if you look at our major capital projects, we won't mention the prom, but let's mention the prom. We've got the Liverpool landing station, St Mary's School, MSC. There's not a capital project that's actually gone on time and to budget. So I think I would love to get involved with that, actually. Thank you.
Well, in the first instance, I'll give the politicians answer and say I'd hate to only change one policy because they're so interconnected that I think in changing one, you potentially overlook a lot of other areas. However, you did ask the question one policy, Damien, so I will answer that. It's not something about which I am passionate, but I think it's something that's fundamental to the future well-being of the island, and that is our taxation policy. And I don't mean taxation of us, the individuals. I mean our global taxation policy. With my background, it's something that I really want to have the ability to influence and to move us into the 21st century, to be seen as a leader in a sustainable and moral tax system. It's not going to be easy, but I would love to see us moving forward with that and having a taxation system that is seen as the envy of the other international financial centres out there.
I have the opportunity to work with a lot of young adults, and let me tell you, Islandman, you are producing some fantastic young people. what I'd like to do is try to figure out how to keep them here. I'd like to figure out how do we give them jobs, careers, and futures here where they feel like they can be part of our community and grow with it. This summer, we had a couple of staff members who had to make decisions between commuting from Douglas down to Port Erin or staying in a camper van. Because if they were trying to get an apartment, there were 30 applications. My whole point is that we have so much potential, and we put the hard work in. We put it in the education and the way that they're raised here. We just need to figure out how to keep them here. And that would be sort of the policy area that I'd like to stay in and get involved with.
Thank you.
The one piece of legislation that I would like to see changing is linked to a raft of other legislation changes that would need to be made. I'm passionate about the island's population. I'm hugely aware of how vulnerable it is. I lived through the latter part of the 50s when we lost 12.5% of the population over 10 years. I lived through the 70s when by 1976 we had 17% of the population here had moved here within 5 years. So I've seen the decline, I've seen the growth, I've seen everything in between. Where we're at now, we've had in 10 years a 35% decline in births. We're into the top oldest 6 countries on the planet. We lost 40% of our 20 to 29-year-olds moved away between the last 2 censuses. We're waiting to see what the next census comes. And this is an area that absolutely needs to be tackled, and you can break it down into many, many component parts. The one I would therefore pick on is the number of people in the Isle of Man telling me that the cost of their care for children is massive. In the UK now, and everybody's getting not means tested 30 hours a week during term time free childcare. That doesn't happen here. I've had young people in the Isle of Man telling me that if they weren't max, they'd be moving away now, they'd be part of that outward movement. I think it's absolutely critical we stem this and address these issues, beginning, I think, with the supporting young families in childcare so that they can continue to have families.
So is that a social justice point, Paul? Just to clarify, is that a social justice point that needs to be addressed?
The social justice point is the issue of young families here. The way it was put to me, I spoke to one young teacher about 6 weeks ago now who described how her entire wage was going for the childcare for her 2 children, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Her entire wage, all her take-home pay, was being swallowed up by this because they had to start early in the day and finish later. I contrast that with what's happening in England at the moment with these 30 hours a week. So the social justice issue is a difference between the 2 jurisdictions.
Thank you. As someone with 2 small children at the moment, I can certainly clarify Paul's point that the cost of children is very high. For me personally, my kind of pet legislation, if you like, or would be the education bill starting up again. So obviously that was something that was at the forefront. It's been talked about for the last couple of years. It's been private public consultation. It's been sent back. It's been a couple of times, and then for whatever reasons, in terms of timescales and stuff, it's run out. I don't like the phrase not fit for purpose, but our current education bill is from 2001. There's a lot of changes gone on in society, a lot of changes have gone on in schools which aren't reflected in that Education Act as it stands at the moment. For me, our schools are kind of a microcosm of our society. Any of the issues and problems that we have in society are prevalent in schools, and if we can solve them and crack those problems in schools, I think that makes the society a better place for us in general. So for me, it would certainly be a reformed Education Act.
Okay, thanks. That's everyone, isn't it? That's done. Good.